Okay, I'm really excited though today to get back into Virgil's Aeneid because yes, we are going to the Underworld. Now we've already heard Aeneas has gotten various prophecies along the way of places he's going to go. He's going to bounce around the Mediterranean before he gets to Italy, but he needs to go to the Underworld, talk to his dad, and get some more information. Because the Underworld is always a source of information, both about the past and about the future, because ghosts can usually tell the future to some degree. And so here we go. So grieving and in tears, he gave the ship her head before the wind, drawing toward land at the Euboean settlement of Cumae. And again, Cumae is a little place in Italy. So Dido has died. So we'll see if we see her again. So like I said, Cumae is a little tiny speck in Italy, and that's where a Sibyl was, a prophetess. So he's got to go and get her along the way. They came on land. I'm going to skip over when there's parts that aren't super important. Aeneas, in duty bound, went inland to the heights where overshadowing Apollo dwells, and nearby, in a place apart, a dark, enormous cave, the Sibyl, feared by men. In her, the Delian god of prophecy inspires uncanny powers of mind and soul. Ooh, two of the gems. Disclosing things to come. Or stones, whatever. Here Trojan captains walked to Diana of the Crossroads wood and entered under roofs of gold. They say that Daedalus, when he fled the realms of Minos, dared to entrust himself to stroking wings and to the air of heaven, unheard of path, on which he swam away to the cold north at length to touch down on that very height of the Chalcidians. Here on earth, again, he dedicated to you, Phoebus Apollo, the twin sweeps of his wings. Here he laid out a spacious temple. So it's giving a... so Patty, yes. Oh, that's weird. Why did one of your... Weird. Hey, Emily. We are about to enter the underworld. Well, we're about to meet the Sibyl at Cumae in Italy. So it gives a little bit of an origin story for the temple itself. Daedalus, who escaped King Minos with the wings, and his son Icarus, who then died. He flew, landed here apparently, and then put down his wings and dedicated the place to become a temple. Because, there's always some reason why a temple is here, a temple is there, etc., etc. Or they're relating it to the old story. I'm gonna skip over all of this. Okay, here the Trojans, blah 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 blah. Return now with the priestess of Apollo and of Diana, goddess of the crossroads. Deiphobe, the Sibyl, Glaucus' daughter. Thus she addressed the king. The hour demands no lagging over sights like these. Instead, you should make offering of 7 young bulls from an ungelded herd, and 7 again well-chosen ewes. With these words for Aeneas, orders his men were quick to act upon, the priestess called them to her lofty shrine. The cliff's huge flank is honeycombed, cut out in a cavern perforated 100 times, having 100 mouths, with rushing voices carrying the responses of the Sibyl. Here, as the men approached the entranceway, the Sibyl cried out, "Now is the time to ask your destinies!" And then, "The god! Look there, the god!" And as she spoke, neither her face nor hue went untransformed, nor did her hair stay neatly bound. Her breast heaved, her wild heart grew large with passion. Taller to their eyes, and sounding no longer like a mortal, since she had felt the god's power breathing near, she cried, "Slow are you in your vows and prayers? Trojan Aeneas, are you slow? Be quick, the great mouths of the god's house, thunderstruck, will never open till you pray." Her lips closed tight on this. A chill ran through the bones of the tough Teucrians. but their king poured out entreaties from his deepest heart. So essentially, they're getting ready to perform a bunch of sacrifices, and Kumai, like I said, it's near the ocean, and there are a bunch of caves, and the caves are like, I don't know what kind of rock it is, but there are a bunch of little caves throughout, and you can hear all sorts of echoes and interesting sounds in these caves. So all of a sudden she starts getting possessed by the god to finish those sacrifices quick. And Aeneas says, "O Phoebus, god who took pity on the pain of Troy, who guided Paris's hand, his Dardan shaft, against the body of Iacides, as you led and I entered all those seas, washing great lands, and then the distant tribe of the Massilians at the Syrtes' edge, now we take hold at last of Italy that slipped away so long. Grant that the fortune of Troy shall have pursued us this far only, and all you gods and goddesses as well, who took offense at Ilium and our pride, at last, and rightly, may you spare Pergamum's children. Most holy prophetess, foreknowing things to come, I ask no kingdom other than fate allows me. Let our people make their settlement in Latium, with all Troy's wandering gods and shaken powers. Then I shall dedicate a temple here to Phoebus and Diana of the crossroads, ordering festal days in Phoebus' name. A holy place awaits you in my kingdom, where I shall store your prophecies, your dark revelations to my people, and appoint a chosen priesthood for you, gracious one. But now commit no verse to the leaves, or they may be confused, shuffled, and whirled by playing winds. Chant them aloud, I pray." So in that, we've got a couple of little notes. First of all, we just last time we talked about when there was the boat race going on, and that if you promise the gods something, it's almost as if you have already done it for the gods, right? You can say, I pray to you right now in my hour of need, and in the future I'm gonna build a temple for you, and it's gonna be great. I'm gonna like fill it with all this cool stuff. And as a transaction, saying you're going to do something and promising is almost like you have already done it, and then you can get the god's favor right then. So that's what Aeneas is doing here. There are also references here to prophecies being stored and written on leaves rather than being spoken out loud. And by real antiquities time, the Sibyl would have all these crazy rantings and ravings, and then the priests would actually write everything down and then try to figure out how they were all pieced together. And there were storehouses of endless just prophecies written out, and it was just gibberish until somebody could figure out, oh, that's what it means, or usually after the fact, oh, that's what it meant, because prophecies and fortune telling are generally garbage. Savage Punch, it depends. Sometimes they're actually fulfilled, but yeah, not always. Then he fell silent. But the prophetess whom the bestriding god had not yet broken stormed about the cavern, trying to shake his influence from her breast, while all the more he tired her mad jaws, quelled her savage heart, and tamed her by his pressure. In the end, the cavern's 100 mouths of all of themselves unclosed to let the Sibyl's answers through. You, sir, now quit at last of the sea's danger, for whom still greater are in store on land. The Dardan race will reach Lavinian country. Put that anxiety away. But there will wish they had not come. Wars, vicious wars I see ahead, and Tiber foaming blood. Simois, Xanthus, Dorians encamped. You'll have them all again, with an Achilles, child of Latium, he too goddess born. So essentially, you're going to have to fight again. It's going to be like another Trojan War, and there's even going to be another enemy who's like Achilles. And nowhere from pursuit of Teucrians will Juno stay, while you go destitute, begging so many towns and tribes for aid. The cause of suffering here again will be a bride foreign to Teucrians, a marriage made with a stranger. So again, relating to the Trojan War and all all of the troubles coming from the marriage of Helen to Paris, a foreign princess. And it'll happen again. Never shrink from blows. Boldly, more boldly where your luck allows, go forward and face them. A first way to safety will open where you reckon on at least from a Greek city. These were the sentences in which the Sibyl of Cumae made from her shrine sang out her riddles, echoing in the cave, dark sayings, muffling truths, the way Apollo pulled her up raging, or else whipped her on, digging the spurs beneath her breast. So, sometimes being possessed by a god is a fun experience, but other times not so much. Here we hear multiple instances of Apollo is just digging on her and forcing her to utter these prophecies. As her fit ceased, her wild voice quieted, the great soldier Aeneas began to speak. No novel kinds of hardship, no surprises loom ahead, sister. I foresaw them all, went through them in my mind. One thing I pray for, since it is here they say one finds the gate of the king of Underworld, the shadowy marsh that wells from Acheron, may I have leave to go to my dear father's side and see him. Teach me the path, show me the entranceway. Through fires and with 1,000 spears behind, I brought him on these shoulders, rescued him amid our enemies. He shared my voyage, bore all the seas with me, hard nights and days of menace from the sea and sky, beyond the strength and lot of age, frail though he was. Indeed, he prayed this very prayer. He told me that I should come to you and beg it humbly. Pity a son and father, gracious lady. All this is in your power. Hecate gave you authority to have and hold Avernus wood. If Orpheus could call his wife's shade up, relying on the strings that sang out loud on his Thracian lyre. If Pollux redeemed his brother, taking his turn at death, so often passing back and forth, why name the heroes, Theseus and Heracles? By birth I too descend from Jove on high. And then, so at the end of that line, there's a dash, and then it says, while in these terms he prayed and pressed the altar, breaking in, the Sibyl said. So he's just going on and on and on. There are all these other people who used to go to the underworld and come back. I should have the ability because I'm descended from the gods. And Sibyl's like, oh, okay, all right. Offspring of gods by blood, Trojan Anchises' son. The way downward is easy from Avernus. Black Dis's door stands open night and day. But to retrace your steps to heaven's air, there is the trouble, there is the toil. A few whom a benign Jupiter has loved, or whom fiery heroism has borne to heaven, sons of gods could do it. All midway are forests, then Cocytus, thick and black, winds through the gloom. But if you feel such love and such desire to cross the Stygian water twice, to view the night of Tartarus twice, if this mad effort's to your liking, then consider what you must accomplish first. A tree's deep shade conceals a bough whose leaves and pliant twigs are all of gold, a thing sacred to Juno of the lower world. The whole grove shelters it, and thickest shade in dusky valleys shuts it in. And yet no one may enter hidden depths below the earth unless he picks this bough. The tree's fruit with its foliage of gold, Proserpina decreed this bow, as due her, should be given into her own fair hands when torn away. There's a lot going on here, but let me just note that Proserpina is the Roman version of Persephone. In place of it, a second grows up without fail, all gold as well, flowering with metallic leaves again. So lift your eyes and search, and once you find it, pull away the bow. It will come willingly, easily, if you are called by fate. If not, with all your strength you cannot conquer it, cannot lop it off with a sword's edge. A further thing is this, your friend's dead body, but you don't know, lies out there unburied, polluting all your fleet with death, while you are lingering, waiting on my counsel here at my door. First, give the man his rest, entomb him lead black beasts to sacrifice. Begin with these amends. Then in due course you'll see the Stygian forest rise before you, regions not for the living. Okay, so again, a lot packed in here. First of all, Aeneas is saying, I want to go to the underworld, I want to talk to my dad. He said he's there, he's waiting, we can reconnect once more, please. Lots of other heroes have done this in the past. I'm a cool dude, I'm descended from the gods, I should be able to go. Sibyl says, alright, here's the deal. It's possible. It ain't easy, but it's possible. And you gotta do certain things first. And then she listed off the geography of the underworld is very complicated in Greek and Roman mythology. If you've played the game Hades, or if you've seen it played like I have, you might know some of the different locations, and especially important are the rivers. There are numerous rivers running through the underworld that are boundaries for different places, and also they have different properties. We'll get into more of that as we go through. And so typically in ancient works, to get to the underworld, you have to be in a place that has water access and a literal underground access. Literally going to the underworld underground. A cave of some sort. But here, the Sibyl says, well, there are two other requirements that you have to fulfill. Number one, just to gain entry peacefully and not die in the process, you need the Golden Bough. Now, if you have read, or the Golden Bough, rather, if you have read sort of the history of mythology scholarship, you might have heard of the book called The Golden Bough. Also, if you know about sort of the Cthulhu mythos and the elder gods ideas, that also ends up being connected to the Golden Bough. But this is, in fact, the origin of that term, the Golden Bough. So the Sibyl says there's a tree, you got to find the tree, and it has a golden branch, essentially, growing out of this tree. And if you are destined, if you are the right person, you can easily pluck it off and take it with you. And it'll grow back again in case somebody else needs it in the future. But if you are not destined, you will not be able to take it off. Not by touching it, not by hacking it off. So we get a little bit of like the Excalibur myth here. If you're the right one, if you're destined, you'll be able to get it. If not, there's no chance. But yes, there is this. Essentially, there's this growing artifact, secret, that you can find out in the wilderness, an access, basically a key to gain access to mysteries beyond what mortals know, and to go to the underworld and all that other stuff. But that's what later people will talk about, looking back and sort of using the Golden Bough as a metaphor for learning all of this crazy stuff through rituals. Things that mankind shouldn't know. But then she says, oh wait, and you've got a dead person you got to take care of. Again, if you remember last time, all of a sudden we were introduced several times to Palinurus, the helmsman for the main ship who fell off the boat and died. Because there has to be some sort of human sacrifice to get to the underworld. She fell silent, closing her lips. With downcast face and eyes, Aeneas turned from the cavern to the shore, dark matters on his mind. Steadfast Achates walked beside him with deliberate pace and equal anxieties. The two exchanged in shifting conversations many guesses as to that friend now dead, now to be buried. So the prophetess had said. Then suddenly they came down to the dry beach. They saw Mysinus, robbed of life by early death. Their own Mysinus, son of Aeolus, never surpassed at rousing fighting men with brazen trumpet, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I remember that some characters have multiple names. Okay. In haste, then, even as they wept, they turned to carry out the orders of the Sibyl, racing to pile up logs for the altar pyre and build it sky high. Into the virgin forest, thicket of wild things, went the men, and down the pitch pines came. The bitten ilex rang with axe blows, ash and oak were split with wedges, mighty rowans were trundled down on the slopes. So Aeneas goes and helps out cutting down trees and building the pyre so they can do the funeral rites. And as he's working, Aeneas wondered, studying the unmeasured forest, and fell to prayer. If only the golden bow might shine for us in such a wilderness, as all the prophetess foretold me was true. Missiness, in your case, only too true. His words were barely uttered when two doves, in casual flight out of the upper air, came down before the man's eyes to alight on the green grass, and the great hero knew these birds to be his mothers. Joyously he prayed, "Oh, be my guides, if there's a way. Wing on into that woodland, where the bow, the priceless bow, shadows the fertile ground. My divine mother, do not fail your son in a baffling time." Then he stood still to see what signs the doves might give, or where their flight might lead him. And they fed, and then flew on, each time as far as one who came behind could keep in view. Then, when they reached the gorge of sulphurous Avernus, first borne upward through the lucent air, they glided down to their desired rest, the two-hued tree where glitter of gold filtered between green branches. Like mistletoe that in the woods in winter thrives with yellowish berries and new leaves, a parasite on the trunk it twines around, so bright amid the dark green ilex shone the golden leafage, rustling in light wind. Aeneas at once briskly took hold of it, and though it clung, greedily broke it off, then carried it to the Sibyl's cave. So he did it. He saw some doves, remembered, doves are special to my mom. Please, doves, show me the way. They nicely flew together in a pattern, so one would go, but the next one could see where the first one was, and he followed them and found the golden bow. It's pretty easy, super easy, barely an inconvenience. Found the tree, grabbed the bow, took it off. Meanwhile, the rest of the Trojans performed the burial rites, heaped up sacrifices, did the purification, blah, 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 blah. All this accomplished, with no more ado, he carried out the orders of the Sibyl. And then went inside. Okay, so now we're going to hear about the actual entry to the Underworld. Everybody ready? The cavern was profound, wide-mouthed, and huge, rough underfoot, defended by dark pool and gloomy forest. Overhead, flying things could never safely take their way. Such deathly exhalations rose from the black gorge into the dome of heaven. The priestess here placed 4 black bullocks, wet their brows with wine, plucked bristles from between the horns, and laid them as her first offerings on the holy fire, calling aloud to Hecate, supreme in heaven, and Erebus. Erebus, again, part of the underworld. Others drew knives across beneath and caught warm blood in bowls, so they slit the throats of the bulls. Aeneas, by the sword's edge, offered up to Night, the mother of the Eumenides, and her great sister Earth, a black-fleeced lamb, a sterile cow to thee, Proserpina. Then for the Stygian king he lit at night new altars, where he placed over the flames entire carcasses of bulls, and poured rich oil on blazing viscera. So again, a lot of animal sacrifices. Only see, just at the light's edge, just before sunrise, earth rumbled underfoot, forested ridges broke into movement, and far howls of dogs were heard across the twilight as the goddess nearer and nearer came. So earthquakes, always an interesting sign that something crazy is going on. "Away, away!" the Sibyl cried. "All those unblessed, away! Depart from the grove, but you, Aeneas, enter the path here, and unsheath your sword. There's need of gall and resolution now. She flung herself wildly into the cave mouth, leading, and he strode boldly at her heels. Gods who rule the ghosts, all silent shades, and chaos, and infernal fiery stream, and regions of wide night without a sound, might it be right to tell what I have heard, might it be right and fitting, by your will, that I describe the deep world sunk in darkness under the earth. Hello, Hudsonizer. So here we get a bit, and this is something that pops up every so often, the idea that the rites that you have to carry out and approaching and getting to the underworld, those are really, really big secrets. And there were religions and cults in the ancient world that promised, if you join us, you'll get this crazy information. You'll know more than normal people know. You'll be inducted into these sacred rites. But you're not supposed to tell anybody who's not part of your mysteries. You're not part of the cult. So here, Virgil is sort of sticking himself into the narrative, saying, I'm about to reveal some stuff here, but it's part of the story, so don't blame me for it. Don't come at me. The gods will decide if it's right. Now dim to one another in desolate night, they walked on through the gloom, through Dis's home, all void and empty realms, as one goes through a wood by a faint moon's treacherous light, when Jupiter veils the sky and black night blots the colors of the world. Before the entrance in the jaws of Orcus, grief and avenging cares have made their beds, and pale diseases and sad age are there, and dread, and hunger that sways men to crime, and sordid want, in shapes to affright the eyes, and death, and toil, and death's own brother, sleep, and the mind's evil joys on the doorsill, death-bringing war, and iron cubicles of the Eumenides, and raving discord, viperish hair bound up in gory bands. So we hear, these are all of the creatures, or they're really all, well, most of them are personifications of emotions that live just on the threshold to the underworld. Disease, age, dread, hunger, want, death, toil, sleep. Sleep is related to death in most ancient religions and cultures. In the courtyard, a shadowy giant elm spreads ancient boughs. Her ancient arms were dreams, false dreams, the old tale goes, beneath each leaf cling and are numberless. There, too, about the doorway, forms of monsters crowd, centaurs, twy-formed Scyllas, 100-armed Briareus, and the Lernaean Hydra hissing horribly, and the Chimera breathing dangerous flames, and Gorgons, Harpies, huge Geryon, triple-bodied ghost. Here, swept by sudden fear, drawing his sword, Aeneas stood on guard with naked edge against them as they came. If his companion, knowing the truth, had not admonished him, how faint these lives were, empty images, hovering bodies, he had attacked and cut his way through phantoms, empty air. Yes, we do have a raving discord, that's true. So then they see monsters, creatures, again, from Greek mythology. Aeneas goes, he's about to attack them, and the Sibyl's like, no, they're just ghosts, don't worry. Piss off, ghost. The path goes on from that place to the waves of Tartarus's Acheron. So again, now we're going to get rivers. So we have the river Acheron. Thick with mud, a whirlpool out of a vast abyss boils up and belches all the silt it carries into Cocytus. Here the ferryman, a figure of fright, keeper of waters and streams, is Charon, foul and terrible, his beard grown wild in horror, his staring eyes all flame. His sordid cloak hung from a shoulder knot. Alone he poles his craft and trims the sails, and in his rusty hull ferries the dead, old now, but old age in the gods is green. Here a whole crowd came streaming to the banks, mothers and men, the forms with all life spent of heroes great in valor, boys and girls unmarried, and the young sons laid on the pyre before their parents' eyes. As many souls as leaves that yield their hold on boughs and fall through forests in the early frost of autumn, or as migrating birds from the open sea that darken heaven, blah, 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 blah. There all stood begging to be first to cross and reached out longing hands to the far shore. So we're also going to start to see a differentiation of who is in which place in the underworld. So people who are waiting to cross include unmarried boys and girls, children who die before their parents. So we have, again, specific places where certain types of people congregate in the underworld. But the grim boatman now took these aboard, now those, waving the rest back from the strand. In wonder at this and touched by the commotion, Aeneas said, "Tell me, sister, what this means. The crowd at the stream. Where are these souls bound? How are they tested, so that these turn back, while those take oars to cross the dead black water?" Briefly, the ancient priestess answered him. "Cocytus is the deep pool that you see, the swamp of Styx beyond, infernal power by which the gods take oath and fear to break it. All in the nearby crowd you notice here are pauper souls, the souls of the unburied. Charon's the boatman. Those the water bears are souls of buried men. He may not take them shore to dread shore on the hoarse currents there until their bones rest in graves, or till they flutter and roam this side 100 years. They may have passage then, and may return to cross the deeps they long for." So if you die, and you are unburied, and the proper rites are not performed for you, you are stuck, stranded, standing on the banks of the stream. Charon cannot take you unless somebody does go and bury you and performs the proper rites, or you are stuck there for 100 years. Then you can cross. So a lesson buried in there is don't piss off your family so they don't bury you and perform the right rites. Anchises' son, Aeneas, had halted, pondering on so much, and stood in pity for the soul's hard lot. Among them he saw two sad ones of unhonored death. Yeah, so he sees some minor people that he's seen before. Just skipping over a little bit. Okay, so the two walked on down to the stream. Now from the Stygian water the boatman, seeing them in the silent wood and headed for the bank, cried out to them a rough, uncalled-for challenge. "Who are you in armor visiting our rivers? Speak, from where are you? Stop there! Say why you come. This is the region of the shades, and sleep, and drowsy night. It breaks eternal law for the Stygian craft to carry living bodies. Never did I rejoice, I tell you, letting Alcides cross, or Theseus and Pirithous, demigods by paternity though they were, invincible in power. One forced in chains from the king's own seat, the watchdog of the dead, and dragged him away trembling. The other two were bent on carrying Our Lady off from Dis's chamber." Now again, in ancient times, if you were hearing this story, you would know all these references, all the characters that he's talking about. So Alcides is Hercules, or Heracles, who came to the underworld. As one of his labors, he had to capture Cerberus, which he did, caught Cerberus, dragged him back up, and then eventually let him go to come back to the underworld. And then Theseus and his best friend had come because they were stupid frat bros and decided at one point that they were going to get super hot wives. And one of them was going to go down and steal Persephone to be his wife, which is really dumb. And then they were stuck in the underworld for a long time, and other stuff happened. But that's what all those references are. Basically, they're saying, Scooby-Doo, where are you? Exactly, Patty. They're just like, where we got to look here, we got to look there. There are ghosts. It's a bad scene. This, the prophetess and servant of Amphrysian Apollo, briefly answered, here are no such plots, so fret no more. These weapons threaten nothing. Let the great watchdog at the door howl on, forever terrifying the bloodless shades. Let chaste Proserpina remain at home in her uncle's house. The man of Troy, Aeneas, remarkable for loyalty, great at arms, goes through the deepest shades of Erebus to see his father. If the very image of so much goodness moves you not at all, here is a bow. At this she showed the bow that had been hidden, held beneath her dress. You'll recognize it. Then his heart, puffed up with rage, subsided. They had no more words. His eyes fixed on the ancient gift, the destined gift, so long unseen, now seen. He turned his dusky craft and made for shore. There from the long thwarts where they sat, he cleared the other souls and made the gangway wide, letting the massive man step in the bilge. The leaky coracle groaned at the weight and took a flood of swampy water in. At length on the other side he put ashore the prophetess and hero into the mire, a formless ooze among the gray-green sedge. Great Cerberus, barking with his triple throat, made all that shoreline ring as he lies huge in a facing cave. Seeing his neck begin to come alive with snakes, the prophetess tossed him a lump of honey and drugged meal to make him drowse. 3 ravenous gullets gaped as he snapped up the sop. Then his great bulk subsided and lay down through all the cave. Now seeing the watchdog deep in sleep, Aeneas took the opening. Swiftly he turned away from the river, over which no soul returns. Cerberus, not the best watchdog. On paper, Cerberus is really scary. Gigantic dog, 3 heads. Sometimes there are snake aspects to him as well. Snake tail or snakes around his necks. Giant, fearsome, scary. But, man, most people who go to the underworld, they easily overpower him, dismiss him, toss him something that makes him sleepy. He is all bark and very little bite. Alright, content warning, some disturbing stuff coming up as far as souls in the underworld and dead things and people. Just letting you know. Now voices crying out loud were heard at once, the souls of infants wailing. At the door of the sweet life they were to have no part in, torn from the breast, a black day took them off and drowned them all in bitter death. Now these were souls falsely accused, condemned to die. But not without a judge or juryman had these souls got their places. Minos reigned as the presiding judge, moving the urn, and called a jury of the silent ones to learn of lives and accusations. Next were those sad souls, benighted, who contrived their own destruction, and as they hated daylight, cast their lives away. How they would wish in the upper air now to endure the pain of poverty and toil. But iron law stands in the way, since the drear, hateful swamp has pinned them down here, and the Styx that winds 9 times around exerts imprisoning power. Not far away, spreading on every side, the fields of mourning came in view, so called since here are those whom pitiless love consumed with cruel wasting, hidden on paths apart by myrtle woodland growing overhead. In death itself pain will not let them be. Here he saw Phaedra, Procris, Eriphyle, sadly showing the wounds her hard son gave, Evadne and Pasiphae, at whose side Laodamea walked, and Caeneus, a young man once, a woman now, and turned again by fate into the older form. So here we have a part of the underworld where there are a bunch of very sad and wretched souls, and it lists them out one by one. So we've got babies who die. We've got people who were killed unjustly. We have suicides. We have people who died essentially of broken hearts, one way or another, who died with unrequited love that ruined their lives. So yeah, this is not a super fun part of the underworld, but it is important for these kind of stories to sort of, number one, list out geography and who goes where, but also it is partly a morality story. These are things that you want to try to avoid, but if these happen, this is what's going to happen in the underworld. So it's looking at all the people who died of unrequited love. Among them, with her fatal wound still fresh, Phoenician Dido wandered the deep wood. The Trojan captain paused nearby and knew her dim form in the dark, as one who sees early in the month, or thinks to have seen, the moon rising through cloud all dim. He wept and spoke tenderly to her. Dido, so forlorn, the story then that came to me was true, that you were out of life, had met your end by your own hand. Was I the cause? I swear by heaven's stars, by the high gods, by any certainty below the earth, I left your land against my will, my queen. The gods' commands drove me to do their will, as now they drive me through this world of shades, these moldy wastelands, and these depths of night. And I could not believe that I would hurt you so terribly by going. Wait a little, do not leave my sight. Am I someone to flee from? The last word destiny lets me say to you is this. Aeneas, with such pleas, tried to placate the burning soul, savagely staring back, and tears came to his eyes. But she had turned with gaze fixed on the ground as he spoke on, her face no more affected than if she were immobile granite or Marpesian stone. At length she flung away from him and fled, his enemy still, into the shadowy grove, where he whose bride she once had been, Sichaeus, joined in her sorrows and returned her love. Aeneas still gazed after her in tears, shaken by her ill fate and pitying her. Boom. I know, Patty, that's why I was wondering if you knew that she was going to show up again. But yeah. Oh, see, Emily, have a good school day. So yes, amongst these, well, both suicides and unrequited lovers, is poor Dido. And Aeneas repeats what he said before, essentially. Look, I loved hanging out with you. Thanks, Nightbot. I loved hanging out with you, my queen. It was not me. I didn't choose to leave. The gods told me, they commanded me. I had to go. Please talk to me. And does she do it? No, she does not. She doesn't even look at him. Eyes down, turns and flees. So take that. There shall be no resolution of that heartbreak. Here they get to the place where men famous in war gather apart. Here Tydeus came to meet them, and then came Parthenopaeus, glorious in arms, Adrastus then a pallid shade. Here too were Dardans, long beswept in the upper air, men who died in the great war. And Aeneas groaned to pick these figures out in a long file. Glaucus, Medon, Thersilochus, beside Antenor's three sons, Polybates, Idaeus, blah 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 blah. And then there are Greeks. Here next he saw Deiphobus, Priam's son, mutilated from head to foot, his face and both hands cruelly torn, ears shorn away, nose to the nose holes lopped by a shameful stroke. Barely knowing the shade who quailed before him, covering up his tortured face, Aeneas spoke out to him in his known voice, Deiphobus, gallant officer in high Teucer's line, who chose this brutal punishment? Who had so much the upper hand of you? I heard on that last night after you had fallen, spent after a slaughter of Pelasgians, fallen on piled up Carthage. It was I who built on Rhoeteum Point an empty tomb and sent a high call to your soul 3 times. Your name, your armor marks the place. I could not find you, friend, to put your bones in earth in the country as I came away. And Priam's son replied, You left undone nothing, my friend, but gave all ritual due. Deiphobus, do a dead man's shade. My lot in the Laconian woman's ghastly doing sank me in this hell. These are the marks she left me as her memorial. That's Helen. He was with her for a little while. Blah, 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 blah. He tells his story. It doesn't really matter. Okay. At this point in their talk, Aurora, borne through high air on her glowing rosy car, had crossed the meridian. Should they linger now with stories, they might spend the allotted time. But at Aeneas' side the Sibyl spoke, warning him briefly. Night comes on, Aeneas. We use up hours grieving. Here's the place where the road forks. On the right hand, it goes past Dis's walls, Elysium way, our way. But on the leftward road will punish malefactors, taking them to Tartarus. Deiphobus answered her, No need for anger, reverend lady. I'll depart and make the tally in the darkness full again. Go on, sir, glory of us all. Go on, enjoy a better destiny. It's very nice of him. So they're about to go. Aeneas. So there's a fork in the road. To the right are happier underworld places, Elysium. To the left, Tartarus. Tartarus is a place specifically, again, in the geography of the underworld, where people go to be punished forever. So Aeneas knows he's got to go right. But he looked to the left, under a cliff, wide buildings girt by a triple wall, round which a torrent rushed with scorching flames and boulders tossed in thunder, the abyss's fiery river. A massive gate with adamantine pillars faced the stream, so strong no force of men or gods in war may ever avail to crack and bring it down. And this is the city Dis, which you may know from other mythologies. Dis has showed up in Dungeons and Dragons over the years. The Iron City in the Underworld. And high in air an iron tower stands, on which Tisiphone, her bloody robe pulled up about her, has her seat, and keeps unsleeping watch over the entranceway by day and night. From the interior groans are heard, and thud of lashes, clanking iron, dragging chains. Arrested in his tracks, appalled by what he heard, Aeneas stood. What are the forms of evil here? O sister, tell me. And the punishments dealt out, why such a lamentation? Yes, Hades. And the Sibyl said, Light of the Teucrians, it is decreed that no pure soul may cross the sill of evil. When, however, Hecate appointed me caretaker of Avernus Wood, she led me through heaven's punishments and taught me all. This realm is under Cretan Rhadamanthus's iron rule. He sentences. He listens and makes the souls confess their crooked ways, how they put off atonements in the world with foolish satisfaction, thieves of time, until too late, until the hour of death. So there's this cool thing that goes on in ancient depictions of the underworld, the Greeks and the Romans. And there's the idea that there are different laws that humans have to abide by, right? You have to obey the laws of the gods, And you also have to obey the laws of your fellow humans. But disobeying those have different punishments and cause different reactions to happen. And we've talked about this lots and lots of times before about how part of mythology and part of these stories is showing how ancient people had to get away from cycles of violence and vengeance into forms of laws and order, just to have society, just to have social contracts where if you do something bad to me, I'm not going to kill you. And then your family is going to come after and kill me, and then so on and so forth, and have vendettas forever. So this also is reflected in their underworld. Because yes, while you do have gods punishing mortals and sending them to the underworld, sending them to specific places, you also, conversely, you have humans who are known for their great wisdom, selected and appointed as judges in the underworld. So shades will come down and humans, well, former humans, will be the judges of them. So we have Minos is a judge, and here we hear about, am I getting the spelling right as it's written here? No, I was close. So Minos and Rhadamanthus are two of these. And again, they were people who were wise. They were wise. They weren't necessarily good, but they were wise. And now they too have jobs to do in the underworld. At once the avenger, girdled with her whip, Tisiphone, leaps down to lash the guilty, vile writhing snakes held out on her left hand, and calls her savage sisterhood. The awaited time has come. Hell gates will shudder now on shrieking hinges. Can you see her now? Her shape as doorkeeper upon the hill? More bestial, just inside, the giant Hydra lurks, with 50 black and yawning throats. Then Tartarus itself goes plunging down in darkness twice as deep as heaven is high, for eyes fixed on ethereal Olympus. So now we're going down, down, down into actual Tartarus, where the worst of the worst stay. Here is Earth's ancient race, the brood of Titans, hurled by the lightning down to roll forever in the abyss. Here, too, I saw those giant twins of Aloeus, who laid their hands upon great heaven to rend it and to topple Jove from his high seat. And I saw, too, Salmoneus, paying dearly for the jape of mimicking Jove's fire, Olympus's thunder. Shaking a bright torch from a 4-horse car, he rode through Greece in his hometown in Elis, glorying, claiming honor as a god, blah, 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 blah. See ya, Patty. Thanks for hanging out. One had sight of Tityus, too, child of all-mothering earth, his body stretched out over 9 whole acres, while an enormous vulture with hooked beak forages forever in his liver, his vitals rife with agonies. The bird, lodged in the chest cavity, tears at his feast, and tissues growing again get no relief. All right, so we've got titans, we've got giants, we've got somebody who pretended to be Jupiter at one point. Hey, here it is. Late mornings are good. We have Tityus, who again offended the gods, and he's gigantic, and there's a vulture eating his liver all the time, and it constantly grows back. As for the Lapiths, need I tell? Ixion, Pirithous, and the black crag overhead, so sure to fall it seems already fallen. Golden legs gleam on the feasters' couches, dishes in royal luxury prepared are laid before them, but the oldest fury crouches near and springs out with her torch, her outcry if they try to touch the meal. So we've got people. Ixion is another dude who offended the gods. They've got people from the fight with the centaurs who are there and can't eat. There's a lot of references to a bunch of other stories. Eridansk, so that's the famous one that Prometheus had, but that punishment was also used for some other people as well. And then there are more generic villains here in this part of the underworld. Here come those who, as long as life remained, held brothers hateful, beat their parents, cheated poor men dependent on them. Also those who hugged their newfound riches to themselves and put nothing aside for relatives. A great crowd, this. Then men killed for adultery, men who took up arms in war against the right, not scrupling to betray their lords. Stop calling me spam. So again, we've got people who didn't honor their family, people who honored and gloried wealth over their relatives, people who adulterers, traitors, essentially. So a bunch of bad people get to hang out here in Tartarus. So it's kind of funny though to think that, you know, you'll have somebody over here who's like just a person who was crappy to his family, right next to these horrific, you know, gigantic characters who had offended the gods, who are being attacked and eaten every day, and then you've got this poor little bastard right next to him. It's a mix of people here in the underworld. All these are hemmed in here, awaiting punishment. Best not inquire what punishment, what form of suffering at their last end overwhelms them. Some heave at a great boulder, Sisyphus, or revolve, spread-eagled, hung on wheel spokes, Ixion. Theseus cleaves to his chair and cleaves to it forever, until Hercules comes to get him. Phlegyas in his misery teaches all souls his lesson, thundering out amid the gloom, "Be warned and study justice, not to scorn the immortal gods." Here's one who sold his country, foisted a tyrant on her, set up laws or nullified them for a price. Another entered his daughter's room to take a bride forbidden him. All these dared monstrous wrong, and took what they dared try for. If I had 100 tongues, 100 mouths, a voice of iron, I could not tell all the shapes their crimes had taken, or their punishments. So again, we hear of famous characters punished by the gods. And then there are those who betrayed their countries, there are those who committed incest, all sorts of awful, awful people. All this he heard from her, who for long years had served Apollo. Then she said, "Come now, be on your way, and carry out your mission. Let us go faster. I see the walls the Cyclopes' forge built, and facing us, the portico and gate where they command us to leave the gifts required." On this, the two in haste strode on abreast down the dark paths of the space between, and neared the doors. Aeneas gained the entrance, halted there, asperged his body with fresh water drops, and on the sill before him fixed the golden bow. I'm thinking maybe I'm going to actually stop here for the day. We do have some more Underworld, but that is a natural break in the story here. And there's some cool stuff coming up. I don't want to have to rush through it too quickly. More rivers, more interesting things about the Underworld. So again, if you've played Hades, or if you've seen it played, or if you know about it, you'll know a lot of these locations already. Some of these characters, in fact. But yeah, there are different levels. So we heard that Tartarus is the level that's all the way down, and Savage Punch. I love the Underworld movies, and I was looking for a GIF, something related to Underworld for my tweet this morning. And of course, I didn't even think of it, but I typed in Underworld, and then it was mostly Kate Beckinsale stuff. So I can dig it. Love that series. First few movies are great. They go downhill steadily from there. Hudsonizer, do I have a favorite Greek myth? Man, a favorite? I don't know. That's a tough question. I'd have to think about it. I really like Greek and Roman mythology. I really love all the stories about the Trojan War. There's so many interesting characters and so much range of emotion and heroism and sacrifice. Yeah, there's a I mean, it's kind of silly to say though, because like the Trojan War is a million stories packed into one gigantic story. Hey, Percy Jackson has a ton of great mythological content. I haven't read the books, but I know about the books, and I've seen the movies. I know the movies aren't exactly the books. The new show sounds interesting, but I know that it's Reardon, right, is the author, but that he's like a scholar and made sure that his references were all real stuff. So that's cool. That gets two thumbs up. Orpheus and Eurydice, great, yeah. So many good stories. Very minor Warhammer spoilers. So a new book just came out a few weeks ago in the Horus Heresy, now Siege of Terra series. We're almost done. We're almost at the end of the Horus Heresy in the novels. But one just came out. I'm reading it. I'm almost done. And something I don't particularly like about that series is there are all these people called perpetuals, and they're essentially they're immortal human beings, and they were all born in ancient times, sometimes in mythological times, and I just don't think their stories are very impactful. But they'll give all these like really goofy references. And in this book, oh my god, it's just like non-stop references to stuff. And it's almost like the book was written for me, because every reference I was immediately like I knew it. And but it's like a lot of mythology references and other stuff. It's really silly. I won't say which character it is, because there are a bunch of perpetuals, so that's not really going to give it away. But essentially, like, one of the perpetuals, he's thinking back to his old timelines, and how right here he traveled with Theseus and was stuck in the underworld. It's like, oh, so he's Perithous? That's weird. And then all this other stuff happened. It was like, oh, so wait, he was friends with. Oh, so he must have been. He was an Argonaut. He was all of these like references that pretty much only I'm gonna get were in this book. And then there's a section in which he's trying to shoot something. And again, this very minor spoilers, but it is a spoiler. So if you're gonna read Mortis, the 1000th book in the Horus Heresy and Siege of Terra series, don't listen for the next minute. But there's a section in which he's about to try to shoot something that's small and far away, and very briefly he recollects, no, I'm not as good a shot as this person, and I'm not as fast on the draw as this person. And if you read over it quickly, you might just be like, oh, these must be just other people he's known. But if you're paying attention and remembering that this is a perpetual, he references the fact that he's not as good a shot as Locksley. That's Robin Hood. He references Paris, Priam's son from Troy. He's not as quick draw as Doc. That's Doc Holliday. So again, it's just, I don't know. I find these things very silly and annoying. I'm sure somebody enjoys them. Anyway, a brief digression. So we'll pick up next week with, well, that is true, Savage Punch. We will pick up next week with the rest of that chapter, because it's so good. I probably could have skipped and went through a little bit more sparingly, but I think the Underworld myths are also really, really interesting. All the different things going on and what it all means, and who has to go where for different reasons. All right, let me see if there's anybody else online right now we can raid. So today I've got a bunch of family stuff to do. Remember that we are no longer doing Toy Tuesday streams, at least for the time being. We'll see. I might bring it back. So no stream tomorrow morning. I will be on Jessica's tomorrow afternoon for Dune's Day. I'm sure we'll finish Dune tomorrow. But it's up to you. It's up to everybody who's watching whether or not it happens. And then the rest of the week as normal, I think. I think this is normal. I don't know. We got a bunch of weird family stuff going on, but I don't think it's going to affect streaming very much. Let's see who is online and doing what. Oh, okay. So if you want to read... Okay. If you want to continue on the train of mythology this morning and ancient Greek stuff, my buddy Ryback Stun is playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which we went over on the Myths and Video Games stream with Pete Wiz that we will be doing this Wednesday. So you can check out that. I'll pop in there and say hi. Or be free. Go enjoy the rest of your Monday. I hope you're all off to a good start to your week. There's a new Marvel... What do you call the thing that Marvel released this morning? It's not a trailer. It's like a, here's how far we've come. Here are all the movies we have planned for the next couple of years. It's kind of cute. Yeah, hype reel. That's a great description for it. So go check that out if you haven't seen it. Lots of Warhammer news coming out this week because it's the week of such things. Warhammer stream with Dale Kingsmill. I don't know. I'll have to look into that. You never know. I'm going to write myself a note. Okay. All right, everybody. Have a good one. Say hi to Ryback Stun. He's playing video games, or go off and do whatever you want. And I'll see you tomorrow for Dune with Jessica. Okay. Bye, everybody. Alright, I'm offline. FYI for all you who cares.